Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of The Professor. Today, we are having Babjot Singh. I had the honor to be the instructor of Babjot during the Masters of Management fall course, which was last year. I had the honor of teaching him Global Finance course. And usually, when we start such kind of interviews, we spend a couple of minutes introducing our guests, but this time we will do a little bit differently. The core thing about this podcast or video or whatever you want to call it is that it's a sincere talk from the heart to the heart. So what we want to do is to let our guests introduce themselves, not in any formal way. It's just in a way that they feel comfortable. So without further ado, hello, Babjot, how are you doing?
Hello, Professor. First of all, thank you so much for having me. So, as you mentioned, like I studied finance from a global perspective from you, and it gave me much more than a global perspective because me not coming from a financial background, I was very reluctant on taking that course. But I think it went very well because here we are having this interview. So, a little bit about myself. I come from the state of Punjab, which is back in India.
Hmm.
I came to Canada for the fall of 2022, and
Okay.
this September 2023, I completed 1 year in Canada. And
Congratulations. Yeah.
yes, not a huge milestone, but a
It
step in
is,
the
it is, it
process.
is, it is.
And I'm set to I'm my degree is set to complete in December of this year. So I'm about to be a master's graduate now. And I think my graduation will take place in the April of 2024.
All right.
So, and that is basically, I think, all the introduction that is required. Maybe more things come up organically.
Of
I
course,
don't
of
know.
course. So tell us more about the background back in India. So if someone wants to make some kind of analogy between what they are currently experiencing in India and you, where did this all come from? Where did this dream to come to Canada and achieve it come? And then you're now doing a master. So tell us more about things from childhood to high school to the bachelor's. Share more about that.
Well, Professor, I don't know if you hear this a lot because a lot of the interviews that you hear are very motivated and process oriented. But in my case, in throughout my life history, it has just been a process of winging it. Like I had while I was in high school, I was only focused on high school. I did not even think of what I'll do after high school up till I graduated from high school. So I graduated from high school. Then I decided, oh wait, maybe I'll do non-medical, basically the sciences, the physics, the chemistry, and the biology part of it. I'm like, okay, maybe that'll be interesting. So
Hmm.
I took that, and then after completing my 11th standard and my 12th standard, again, I had no idea what I do. So I basically just Googled, okay, which is the best paying which is the best engineering course that would give the highest paying jobs, because at that point I didn't really know what to do. So they said, oh, computer science and engineering is one of the best is one of the best courses you could do back in India. Also I have a keen interest in computers, because I play a lot of games. So I thought somehow and maybe in some way they would relate. They did not. So I did 4 years of my bachelor's in computer science and engineering, and I actually got campus placed in a company called Ericsson.
Okay.
After graduation, I spent 1 year in Ericsson as an intern,
Ericsson
and
is a big name, so apparently you did well during your bachelor's.
I mean, Professor, yes. The thing is, like, once I start doing it, I kind of have to finish it
Okay.
because I sort of take it personally. Like, if I start something, I have to do it in a good, like in a proper way. As in,
Okay.
one of my managers, he uh, asked me to hop on a call with a client once, and I realized talking to clients was actually the most enjoyable part that I've had so far in my job. And that was not even what I was supposed to do. That was just something that I did one day. So I was like, okay, if I'm enjoying this part more, maybe I should start focusing on this part because that is what I excel in.
Okay.
So I made it. I've made a very controversial decision at that point to quit. They offered me a job contract for 2 years, and I was like, do I really want to do 2 years of this? So I made a quick decision, and I was like, okay, I'll just quit this and I'll start maybe pursuing my master. Then I started applying for colleges in Canada because I was looking to apply for the US as well, but my younger brother wanted to go to US. and you know how younger brothers are. This
Yeah.
he said, oh, he thought that I was coming to the US to spy on him. So he
Okay.
he said, no, you are not coming to the US. You apply to anywhere else. There are so many other countries. So basically, then that is how I decided to come to Canada.
So why both of you chose North America? Why not somewhere else? Like why not Europe? Why not UK? Why not Australia? What is the motivation behind choosing North America for both of you?
Professor, I think inherently we did not think much about it because Europe and Australia are great options. But somewhere during the decision making progress, both of our minds immediately came to North America.
Okay.
And maybe that might be a result of the all the knowledge that we've been getting about North America in India. Oh, how the Western countries are so great, and how that maybe a part of that is it is that. But then there was also a lot of positive confirmation. Like when we were applying for colleges, when we were looking for degrees, we were going to university sites. The universities in North America just spoke a lot more to us than the universities in Europe.
Okay.
Uh, and again, like I don't know if this is true or not, but when we think of Europe, we obviously it just never I just never think of education there.
Okay.
Somehow I just think of tourism there, and maybe that was the reason. But this is actually a very great question because I never really pondered upon it. So,
Interesting
I think
because when you think about it from an institution perspective and how universities think about sourcing students, universities give it a lot of thought. And just hearing from you that this decision came subconsciously, that you just tried to link higher education, and the first thing that came to your mind is North America. That speaks a lot about how is the impact of just creating that word of mouth, or how uh, universities in North America market themselves and position themselves in the mind of prospective student, that if someone wants to pursue higher education, so maybe North America should be. But yeah, that's interesting. And tell me, why Canada? So why you said US, okay, and then Canada, and then Windsor. When you chose to come to Canada, and then Windsor popped up in the top of the list, how this decision was made?
so, Professor, when Canada, because USA was out of the question, because apparently my brother thought US is very small. So I thought
Okay.
we can go to two completely separate states. He was like, oh, no, you're not. I'm like, okay, Canada it is then. And
Which
Canada,
university your brother goes to?
he goes to the University of Utah. He's an
Okay,
honor student
okay,
there, actually. So,
okay,
yeah,
okay,
he's doing
okay.
pretty
So
well.
it's very far.
He is, yes, he is.
All right. And then Windsor?
Professor, University of Windsor is actually one of the only universities that offer MOM courses that span for 2 years. Like other
Okay,
universities, they do offer MOM courses, but they're only for like 1 year. And I
okay,
wanted to study as much as in my master's that I want, and not so much as study, experience my master's as much as I want, because I think 2 years for master's is standard, and I really wanted that. So that really narrowed down my list. And then again, I think the proximity to Detroit was one of the biggest considerations that I had.
Tell us more about the application process when it comes to applying for the visa and applying for the university itself, because most of our audience are prospective students. So someone might think, oh, and it is a lengthy process that requires a lot of documents. Tell us about your experience when you applied for the visa and applied for the program itself.
So, Professor, again, now this is no dig to all the immigration companies out there. Like, I feel like they're doing a great job,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
amazing, because they are there to fulfill dreams of the people who possibly do not have the resources or tools or the knowledge to fill it by themselves. But I also feel some immigration companies are just there to exploit the people.
Yeah.
So, I think this is where information plays a big part, because again, people say that making having applying for the visa, applying for this is very tedious process. It is, don't get me wrong, but if you just read the guidelines that they are, you'll feel like the actual official guidelines from the website, you'll feel it is not as complex as you might have earlier thought it to be.
Okay.
Let me give you an example. So this is what happens when you don't like, this is very true in my case. What happened, so my study permit was set to expire, this is on December 1st, 2023. We have huge story because I did not renew my passport before applying for visa. And I asked a couple of students, a couple of my seniors, and they went, all these things. Oh no, you have to do this. Oh no, you have to do this. Oh, it's not possible. Or you have to write a letter to that. You letter write to that letter to that. And at that point, I was like, oh, am I going to get deported now? I don't think I'll get all that done in such a small time.
Yeah.
So then I did a logical thing. I just went to the International Student Center of a university, and they were great. They just told me, "Have you even opened the website yet?" I'm like, "No." Then they were like, "How do you know it's that complex?" I'm like, "Because people are saying it's very complex." And she was so nice. She just said, she just opened the website in front of me, and it was just a like 10 or 12 step procedure. And 10 or 12 steps were just like telling, oh, you just fill this form, you just fill this form, you just fill this form, and then you apply, and it's and you won't believe, Professor, I did the entire process after sitting. Like, it took me 2.5 hours to renew my study permit.
Okay. Interesting.
So the process is tedious, yes, but it is not as complex as some people might think.
All right. All right.
Like that is the one thing that I realized. Like, if you just, because everyone has smartphones these days, so if you just go over it, for example, in Canada we have the IRCC website, and they've done such a great job at explaining everything. They have discussion forums for everything. So I feel like if you just open that, you will feel, oh, it's not that complex of a process.
All right. So let me ask you about a strange moment that all of us as immigrants felt when they arrived. And from the conversations I'm having, everyone has a different experience. So tell me about the moment when you get off the airplane and then just past the security desk, and then you got your student permit, and then you're just by yourself at you arrived in Toronto, Pearson International Airport.
No, Professor. Actually, interestingly, I arrived in Montreal.
All right, all right. So Montreal Airport, you just passed the customs, and you're there with your two suitcases that has everything that your parents put for you. Tell me about that moment. How did you feel?
Professor, I think it was a very surreal moment because earlier when you used to dream about that, not dream about it, but think about it. You used to think, oh, I'm going to a foreign country. It's going to be so much new experiences, so much more this, so much more that. But I think when I came to Montreal, I just felt sort of empty because I just feel like there was a lot of disconfirmation there between my expectations and the outcomes. So,
Okay,
like my expectations, I think, were much more greater
okay,
than the outcome that I had. So sort of felt like, huh. I mean, I because I had been to Canada before as well. Maybe that could have been a huge part.
all right,
But then I think I did not feel the wow moment after I came to the University of Windsor, because that is when I saw the campus. That is when, oh, this is where I'm spending the next 2 years of my life. So I'm
okay.
like, okay, that is when I felt like, oh, this is a new step. But when I arrived in Montreal, it was sort of like I was expecting something to change inside of me. I was expecting it to be like, oh, I'm in Canada now. This is what I'm doing. But the one interesting thing that happened was, like, Montreal airport, everyone was speaking French there.
Yeah,
So I so I did sort of feel like, oh, I'm in
you're
a
in the
new
wrong country,
country.
yeah. Yeah.
So I was speaking them. And these are some of the few things that I do just to keep myself entertained. So I just pretended that I knew French. I mean, and I speak very broken French. So I just used to keep saying the whole two things again and again. And I like that because my flight got delayed by 12 hours in Montreal.
Oh, okay, okay.
So I had to pass time somehow.
All
So
right,
that
all
is what
right.
I did in Montreal airport, just talking in French with strangers, and broken French, I will say.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
only four phrases that I know. So yes, Professor, like that wow moment that I was expecting it would happen, like everything would drastically change. I don't think it happened.
That's very authentic, by the way, because most of us think that once we step our foot into a country that we plan either to live for a considerable point of time or to immigrate or anything, we might think that things will just snap and change immediately. But you realize that no, it's up to you how you will get the experience. Nothing externally will happen. It's just a new country, and you will have to adapt. So if you didn't have that inner motivation and inner skills that will make you success in your own country, it's gonna be happening one more time everywhere. So yeah, that's very authentic. So you flew from Montreal to Windsor, you settled for a couple of days, you went to the campus. Tell us about the financial burdens, because apparently one of the most important things that most people, most prospective students think of, it's how am I going to cover my tuition fees, and how am I going to pay rent, and how do I keep just paying my bills? Living in Canada, it is expensive, and that's a main challenge that a lot of people think of. So tell us about that kind of challenge. How did you manage it?
Yes, it is very tough to manage tuition expenses in Canada. But one thing I will point out that income compensation in Canada is fairly better than a lot of countries.
Yes.
So if you are doing part time, it you can survive. Like it's not like you can survive reasonably well. I've seen international students roaming in Mustangs, Dodge Chargers, Dodge Challengers while going to college. So I think yes, it may be tough, but then again, it depends on where you're doing most of your spending.
Of course,
Like,
of course. And how much is the total tuition that you had to plan for? Like how much is,
professor, I
just a
think
rough figure. Do not give
professor, I think
exact.
I made an estimate of around $50,000.
All right, all right.
And I think that is how much, give or take, that it took, like for the tuition fee. I think we
Yes.
paid 20, 10, 20, 40. I think, yes, we paid around 45,000 something, like after
Okay,
the end
okay.
of 4 semesters, master's course in University of
Yeah,
Windsor,
yeah.
boosting supply chain. Yes,
Of
that is
course,
how much
because
we
it
paid.
does change by university and institution, of
Yes.
course, and type of degree that you're taking. So this is absolutely only in Windsor. And tell us about your like living expenses and that kind of a thing. Was a part-time job enough to cover that, or how did you manage to do this?
Professor, again, first 2 semesters I was just
Yeah.
leeching off of my parents. Then after having a conversation, I finally did decide to get a job, and then uh, you do cover it, Professor. Like referring back to my previous point, you get paid fairly decent in Canada
Yeah.
compared to other countries. So if you, because I have some of my friends who even work full time, who came to Canada before the October of 2022, they had the provision of working for over like for full time, and most of my friends are availing it, and they are doing fairly well. One of them actually has like a very expensive car.
Yeah.
So if your work basically, if you are good at time management, if you can manage your studies, sort of juggle them between your studies, your academic pursuits, and your part-time or full-time job, like you will get it. I think that is what most of the international students do. And they do it really well, because international students inherently are very creative. Like they make out business opportunities in almost every aspect that I've seen. So, for example, did you know there's actually a full Windsor to Toronto like ride share thing that is happening?
Oh,
And that is
okay.
all run by international students. And I think that is amazing, because uh, basically, if you want to make money in Canada, you can. Like maybe that is because it is close proximity to the US.
Yeah.
But then, yes, if you are working, you will be able to manage your tuition fees and your living expenses and your groceries, and possibly even get a fancy car.
All right. All right. That's promising. Good to know all of that. And that will lead me to ask you about the time management, because one of the main obstacles that really comes to our lives when we immigrate is about time as a concept, and how do we respect the time in coming to classes, or just adapting to the part-time job, and then finding time to study, and then finding time of ourselves. So how did you transition? And then because of your experience that you experienced it the both ways, when you did not have to work and then now you're working. So how did you manage that?
Professor, I think that is based on, like, all of it depends on this one most important thing that I feel is how your schedule looks like.
Okay.
Because in my fourth semester, I was one of the lucky ones who registered for courses beforehand.
All
So
right.
we only have, so I only got classes 2 days a week.
Okay. That's a
As
very good
compared
tip. Yeah.
Yes, as compared to my courses during my first semesters, I had to go to school 4 hours a week. Oh,
Okay.
sorry, 4 days a week.
Yeah.
So even though the total hours that I was doing were the same, like now I have classes from 11:30 to 4, Monday and Wednesday. But in first semester, I used to have like one class on Monday, two classes on Tuesday, one class
Yeah.
on Wednesday, then two classes on Thursday. The problem with that is even though you're only spending 2 hours of your time, you think it's only 2 hours of your time, but then you have to take into fact that you have to go to the university, you have to come back, you have to
Yeah,
mentally prepare to go to the university, and you cannot give that day, that whole period as available to your potential employers.
of course.
So I think when you're applying for part time, the great one of the thing that highlights the most is your availability. So if you say so being unavailable on only Sunday because you have classes on Monday and Tuesday because you have classes on Wednesday is much more appealing than saying, oh, only available for Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
And you found that employers really care about availability when you communicate
I
to them during
Yes,
interviews.
in part times was absolutely, absolutely, because in part times they're just looking for people who can work who, because they again, it just comes to cost minimization. All the employers want to cut as much as we hate it, but they want to cut as much cost as they want. So paying one person for more hours is much easier than paying two people for the same amount of hours.
All right, all right. And you will be graduating in 3 months or less?
Professor, like my final exam that I will be giving will be in December, but the
Okay.
graduation ceremony will be in April.
All right, all right. And the big question, what are your plans?
Oh, Professor, again. I don't think I will actually think about it. I think I have been thinking about it, but then again, like given my history, I don't think I'll be able to make a proper decision until I have that sort of situation wherein I've given my final exam, and then I will feel like, okay, what I'm going to do now. Because I think maybe this is one of the drawbacks that I have, or just one of the features that I have, is that I only wish to focus on one thing at one time.
Yeah.
And it's not as strategic as most people would want, because most of the motivational speakers, they just tell you that, oh, you need to know what you want to do in your life by the time you're 3 years old. but
Not necessarily, not necessarily. It's not
but then
realistic.
again, as I said, like my process is just winging it, like just seeing where I feel best, and it has been working out great for me for the past year, like for during my life. Like I am here having this conversation with you, like possibly I did something enough to impress you for you to deem this interview necessary. So I just feel like once I've given my final exam, I mean, I'll definitely work. Like one of the most important, crucial decisions that I made was, okay, do I want to pursue further studies or do I
Yeah,
want to work?
yeah.
And I think that was an important decision to make, and something that I have not procrastinated on, which I'm glad. But I think I've made the decision that okay, I will be working. Like I will not pursue further degrees. So I think I've only reached that level yet. And once I've given my final exam, once I have that whole mindset, okay, now this is finished. Now what? So my whole life has been like, now this is finished. Now what? So
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think I'll have a much better, clearer view once I give that. But then, yes, I have decided that I'll be working and not studying.
All
If
right.
that answers your question.
Yes, yes, yes. And now, if you look back at the last 16 months, that was quite a journey. And I make a very good guess that it was full of ups and downs. If you now take a helicopter view and just review these 16 months, what you make up out of this? If you just review your journey, what are the highlights that you can just tell us about it?
Professor, one of the highlights was the relationships that I built with my professors, and how
Okay.
open they were to relations, like how open they were to accepting students who they felt like, okay, they actually care about the subject that you're teaching in. That was I have. And then professor is just the meeting new people. Like I think the one thought that changed my whole journey in Canada was like, you must have seen, professor, in universities they have a very community focused groups.
Yeah.
Like all the groups only talk to, most of them, I won't say all of them, most of them only talk to other people unless absolutely necessary, like if it's for a group project or if it's
Yeah.
like a formal hi hello. But the turning point in my life was when you actually start making friends with them,
Yeah.
and that is when you learn about their culture. That is when you feel like we are basically the same people, but we've been living different lives, and it's just so amazing that you've been living completely different to yours, and I've been living completely different to I've been living completely different to yours, and yet somehow we're in the same place doing the same thing. And another professor, just roaming Canada. Canada is so beautiful. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
oh, it is so beautiful if you actually take the time to roam around. It is so beautiful. Even the streets, like you will see, they have designated lawns in front of houses, and that comes under the government, but then it's your responsibility to keep them clean.
Yes, yes.
And it may be a nuisance for people who actually own houses, but for us international students, that just looks very nice, that because we come from very crowded places, like my personally from India, very crowded. It is a very pleasant on the eyes. Like you can just go for a walk, and that is great. Professor, if you can just guide me to like what other highlights are you mentioning? Like
It's
in
okay,
my,
no, just it's really on the top of your head. But the other way around is if you have thought of one mistake, a thing that you really need to warn prospective students of making, what would be that mistake that you did? And if you look back at time, you wish that someone talked to you about it, what would be
Professor, I think it would be isolating yourself,
that? Mm-hmm.
and
Interesting.
like and just it. I know now this is sounds very meta, but you have to realize who you are.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is not go on a whole meditation and all that journey. Like being yourself is just doing things that you like. And that is one of the things that I experienced in Canada. And once you realize that that loneliness is not coming from people isolating you, but you sort of isolating from yourself because you're not doing the things that you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and yes, like that would be like one of the things that I could like because
All right, all right. My last question will be if someone right now in a small town or city in India is listening to this podcast or video, and he or she or they is thinking about, oh, I cannot do this. I just cannot leave my parents and the comfort of my home and my town and the people I know. I cannot do all of that. And you want to give them a message in your own language, not in English. So just I will leave the space up to you. Use as much or as less time as you want. Just tell them a message, a sincere message from you, just to encourage them that this is doable.
and if you want me to say something in my native, I'm a Punjab
Please.
speaker for life. ਤਾਂ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਘੈਂਟ ਆ ਜਾਓ ਜਿੰਨੇ ਲੋਕੀ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਆ ਜੌਬ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗੀ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਹੀ ਆ ਲਾਈਕ ਜੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਲੱਭਣੀ ਹੋਵੇ ਸਭ ਲੱਭ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਇੱਥੇ ਲੋਕੀ ਚੈਲੰਜਰਾਂ ਮਸਟੈਂਗਾ ਲਾ ਕੇ ਆਪ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਚੈਲੰਜਰਾਂ ਮਸਟੈਂਗਾ ਕਢਾਈਆਂ ਹੋਈਆਂ ਤੇ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਕਹਿ ਰਹੇ ਨਾ ਆਓ ਤਾਂ ਇਹ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਥੋੜੀ ਜਿਹੀ ਗੱਲ ਉਹ ਲੱਗੀ ਆ ਬਟ ਬਾਕੀ ਅਗੇਨ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਚੋਇਸ ਆ ਸੋ ਬੇਸਿਕਲੀ ਵਾਟ ਆਈ ਸੈਡ ਵਾਸ a lot of people you might see that there's this growing trend of people telling international students to not immigrate to Canada because they're like, oh, Canada is not a big, oh, Canada is having this, oh, Canada is inflation, oh, Canada is way too expensive, but then they are doing that by sitting in their $1 million houses
Yeah, yeah.
and having this fleet of cars, and they're saying to other people don't come, and I'm like, that just shouts hypocrisy to me. Because if you hate Canada so much, like you can always just emigrate back.
Yes, yes, yes. All
So
right,
that was
Bamjot,
just
that was wonderful. And thank you so much for sharing all this sincere talk. I appreciate it so much. You cannot imagine how impactful this will be, since we do not know how many people will actually listen and watch this. So this will be a lifetime contribution for anyone who might think that they do not have the enough capacity and encourage in order to come to immigrate to somewhere else. But you are a real life example that this is doable. Last but not least, I sincerely thank you for your time. Knowing you and being in the same classroom with you was always a pleasure. And one of the most cherishable thing that I really thank God for each and every day is the people I know, the people that this profession comes across to me each and every day. So thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing your experiences. And thank you for our audience for watching, and stay tuned for further episodes. Thank you so much. Bye.
thank you, Professor. Bye.
Bye.